What's up, smarty people? It's KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. This is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do I always send you? DJLittleRock.com. One more time, DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote, and maybe you could have me at your next event. You know I like to party with the people. Also, if you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast. It's called What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 discoveries made by mistake. Inventions are often conceived through order and precision, but sometimes they're not. As history shows, on occasion, it's the chaotic, messy moments that lead to the greatest discoveries, from accidentally boiling tea leaves in their containing silk bag to forgetting a soda outside on a freezing night. These everyday objects owe their existence to observant and creative minds who found silver linings in mishaps. Here's 10 well-known products that were born on days when things went wrong. Tea bags. People weren't supposed to dip the small bundles of tea leaves in hot water. At least that was not what American trader Thomas Sullivan intended in 1904 when he shipped samples of his tea to Europe in small silk bags to keep the leaves neatly separated. He hoped buyers would open the bags and pour hot water over the leaves using strainers, as was customary back then. However, many customers found that the silk bags were very practical for making tea easily. This observation led to the development of small bags for marketing tea. Gradually, the industry evolved from silk bags to more sustainable and cheaper options. It was 30 years later that the parchment paper dual-chamber bags were invented, leading to the tea bags we know today. Champagne. Though wine had been produced in the northern French region of Champagne since Roman times, the Champenois had a long-lasting problem: re-fermentation. In winter, cold temperatures would halt the fermentation process. Dormant yeast cells would reactivate with the warmth of spring, releasing carbon dioxide gas. The pressure sometimes incorporated bubbles into the drink, and at worst, caused the bottles to explode in the cellars. Dom Pierre Perignon, a monk in the 17th century, was tasked with finding a solution to re-fermentation. He experimented with grape varieties and processes for making wine, which led to the erroneous myth that he invented champagne. While he was indeed the creator of winemaking practices that are relevant today, champagne as we know it today was simply the evolution of that fizzy wine, which Champenois decided in the end wasn't such a bad idea. Brandy. 16th century Dutch traders are credited with the invention of brandy. Its name derives from the Dutch term for burnt wine, brandywine. That alone hints at an interesting story. When wine needed to be stored to travel on long sea journeys, Dutch traders developed a heating, distilling system to preserve it. The idea was to make a very concentrated version that could be rehydrated with water upon arrival. However, eventually they noticed that this burnt version, when stored in wooden casks, developed a unique flavor and aroma that people enjoyed. This discovery led to different regions developing their own variations, giving rise to alternatives such as cognac and Armagnac. Popsicles. The creator of popsicles was an 11-year-old, according to the company. One day in 1905, he forgot a cup of soda with a stirring stick outside on a cold night. By the next morning, he realized that the drink had frozen, but the stick made it easy to handle. Curious, he gave the frozen soda a try, and he liked it. His name was Frank Epperson, and he initially called his invention Epsicles and sold them locally. It wasn't until he was an adult that he decided to patent the invention and commercialize it on a larger scale. Eventually, Epsicles were sold worldwide. The story goes that because Frank's children referred to them as Popsicles, the product was eventually rebranded as Popsicles. Saccharin. According to the story, Konstantin Fahlberg was enjoying his dinner after a long day, working in the lab when he noticed that his bread tasted unusually sweet. He traced this quality back to a compound he had been studying earlier. He was a chemist analyzing coal tar at Johns Hopkins University, and that day in 1879, he'd been handling a derivative called benzoic sulfamide. After this discovery, aided by his mentor, Ira Remsen, Fahlberg developed a synthesis of the substance he named saccharin, inspired by the Latin word for sugar, saccharon. The artificial sweetener soon became commercially available and was widely used during sugar shortages that occurred during World War I. Smoke detector. Nowadays, smoke detectors come in very compact enclosures, making them easy to install in many homes, but they weren't always the sealing discs that we know today. In the late 1930s, Swiss physicist Walter Jaeger was working on a device that would alert people of poisonous gas leaks. Legend has it that while taking a frustration break near one of his failed inventions, he lit a cigarette and the machine detected it. The device was triggered, and Jaeger realized that it could alert people of the presence of smoke. The first versions of the device were only available for industrial use until American businessman Dwayne Pearsall developed a battery-powered detector in 1965, practical for home use. Friction matches. In 1826, John Walker, an English chemist, accidentally invented matches while trying to create a new lighting method. He was mixing chemicals with a stick, and when he scraped the stick on the floor to clean it, the chemicals ignited, sparking the idea of lighting chemicals by friction. He presented this concept in London, and inventor Samuel Jones adopted it into the first version of friction matches. These early matches were unpredictable, often igniting with sparks and producing strong fumes. For this reason, as well as for marketing purposes, these early prototypes were known as lucifers for many years. Superglue. In 1942, Harry Coover was an inventor at Eastman Kodak Company, where the team was trying to develop clear plastic guns to supply to Allied soldiers during World War II. They were testing the material cyanocrylate, a compound that turned out to be incredibly durable but extremely sticky, so it was discarded. A decade later, while reviewing his notes, Coover remembered the cyanocrylate and returned to its investigation. He quickly realized that it was a powerful substance for holding things together without the need for pressure or heat. In the 1950s, the Eastman team marketed this product as Eastman 910, which was later renamed Superglue. Implantable pacemaker. This is another example of life-changing technology born thanks to a machine not doing what it was supposed to do. In 1958, engineer Dr. Wilson Greatbatch was trying to design equipment that would record the rhythm of the heart. He installed an incorrect resistor in the circuit and observed that the system produced intermittent pulses. The discovery led to the design of a small device that could aid the beating of a human heart, though it took time to develop one that could be implanted. By 1958, Greatbatch and his collaborators had created a prototype that was tested on patients. The doctor spent the following decades iterating and perfecting his invention. And finally, X-rays. This is one of the most famous examples. German physics professor William Röntgen stumbled on what he called X-rays by accident. Imagine experimenting with cathode rays in 1895, when suddenly noticing that a strange glow can pass through several opaque objects in your office. In preliminary articles, Röntgen referred to this radiation as X to signify that its type was unknown. The label stuck even as these rays were further experimented with. Its medical relevance soon became obvious, and the first photographic plate made with X-rays was of his wife's hand. Records say that upon seeing the image of her bones, she remarked, "I've seen my death." That's 10 discoveries made by mistake. Did you learn something new? Do you know of any discoveries that were made by mistake? Let me know. This has been What Makes You Smarter. It's KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.